Rick Shew here with Left Shoe Politics. I wanted to talk this morning a little bit about the Kavanaugh situation and the sexual assault charges against him. I want to start with a tweet that I sent from my personal Twitter handle on the 13th. So this was just a few days ago, September 13th, 2018. And it was in regards to Virginia Hume, at Virginia Hume, Twitter handle. I knew Brett Kavanaugh in high school. We graduated same year. I never heard anything untoward about him. Okay? So I responded, I'm a liberal that is actually very annoyed about Merrick Garland, beyond disgusted that a compromised president under a serious legal cloud is appointing a lifelong judge to the highest court in the land, etc. But I'm also appalled by this particular attack on this man by desperate Democrats. So that was my tweet the other day. And the reason I sent that, and by the way, I have been dogpiled on Twitter for that by conservatives for saying that Trump was compromised, and then also by liberals for suggesting that this was an unfair attack. Turns out that maybe it wasn't an unfair attack. And that's something that I will retract. In fact, I probably should just retract it. But I will never put it past Democrats to be doing sleazy politics, okay? They are better than Republicans when it comes to policy, when it comes to race relations, when it comes to gender relations, etc., or gender issues, I should say. But in terms of just down and dirty politics, no, they're all pretty equally despicable. So that's why I put that up, because it sure looked that way. The optics were bad. I wasn't feeling it. I felt comfortable putting that out there. And again, I don't put things past Democrats. But since then, it turns out that the letter, supposedly that Feinstein was holding, was actually, well, the person has come forward now. And it's Christine Blasey Ford, who is a professor in California. Okay? And she is now willing to come public and testify. And what she is claiming is that Brett Kavanaugh in high school more or less attempted rape on her and had her pinned down, was covering her mouth when she was trying to scream, and she was in fear of her life. And the only reason she was able to escape it was because another person came in and jumped on and interrupted everything, and that was that. So nothing else about him in this regard has been brought up. Now, I want to also make this clear again. I don't think this man should be appointed. I don't think that Trump should be able to appoint anyone at this juncture while this investigation is going on and while his legal issues continue to mount. I think he's a compromised president who should not be appointing Supreme Court justices. I don't like anything about Kavanaugh in terms of his policy. I don't like what he stands for. I don't like his views on abortion. I don't like his views on protecting those in power the way he is, thinking that presidents are above the law. I don't like his issues on guns. There's very little I could say about this man that I like politically, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I think he's a bad person. He's misguided. However, if these accusations are true, then we have a serious problem on our hands, and they should postpone the vote, and this should be held. This person, Miss Ford, deserves her day in court, figuratively and literally. Now, here's the problem. There's a lot of people, especially on the right, because this becomes politics, that start to look at this and they think it's suspicious. That why did Ms. Feinstein hold this letter since June, July? Why is this person just now coming forward? And you know what? Here's what I'll say to that. And this might be an unpopular thing to say here. I understand the suspicion. Okay? You have to. We can't just say that, okay, this is something that actually took place. She needs to be vetted. She needs to be interviewed. Now, apparently, she talked to her husband about this in 2002. She talked to a therapist about this in 2012 when she was in marriage counseling. She's a professor. She is a credible source, and she deserves to be heard. That doesn't necessarily mean that he deserves to be accused of something yet. Okay, there are opportunists in the world, and sometimes, yeah, they're women. Okay, and it's unfortunate, but any woman that claims to be sexually abused, or any person, period, they deserve to be heard, and they deserve to be heard fairly. And I don't think that most women that come forward about sexual assault accusations are lying. I certainly don't. Sure, There are people that are opportunists, including women, and they could use this to attack certain politicians or people in power. Don't put that past a person just because it's a woman. But to put yourself out there for this humiliation and the demonizing that's already happening online and elsewhere, that requires bravery, okay? I personally know people, and I'll be very ambiguous here, that were sexually assaulted when they were younger. And I'm one of very few people that even know about this, about certain people. They have never come forward. They have only told a handful of people in their life. And I think about them. And I think about what would happen if the person who did this to them, what would happen if that individual was running for a position of power? Would they then come forward? Would they then have an obligation to let people know the depth of this person, the character, their history, what they did? And the answer is yeah, they probably all would. And then what would happen to that individual? Why are they just now coming forward? Why didn't they tell anybody? That's what happens when we want to shame people that are victims. But with that said, I also understand the suspicion of this coming out at the 11th hour. I get that. But all I'm saying is she deserves a fair hearing, and she is now willing to go public. Public, okay? She wants a public hearing, and you're damn right they should give it to her. And by the way, if this ends up being true, okay, and I'm going to assume that she's telling the truth, but I also think that he deserves, as a man, that this needs to play out appropriately. And I don't want anybody being accused of something, especially this egregious that they didn't do. Okay? So I don't know. He's innocent until proven guilty, but she deserves to be heard, and he deserves a fair rebuttal. With that said, if this ends up being true, he does not get a vote. He is not going onto the Supreme Court. And it's a big if, the Democrats actually take back the House and maybe even the Senate. By the way, don't be surprised if they don't do either, because they're Democrats and they're hacks. But if they do, then unfortunately, the standard that was set with the Merrick Garland issue, where he did not even get hearings or vote, or they didn't even set up meetings with this man. And it was Obama's constitutional right to appoint a Supreme Court justice. It was the Senate's job to, what's the technical term, to instruct in I don't remember exactly how it's phrased, but it's essentially they were able to spin it, say, well, all they have to do is instruct and advise, or something like that. And that's what they did. Well, that's horseshit. That's not what that means. That's not what that implies. And they know that. So anyway, so they set that standard. So what I hope what happens is if this is true, and it's a very sad state of affairs that it is. I don't care that it happened in high school. You're responsible for your own actions. I was a 17-year-old boy once. I would have never done that to a girl, much, not any more than I would at 43. But anyway, if true, he doesn't go in the Supreme Court, and if Democrats take back the House and even the Senate, they hold that Supreme Court seat. I don't care if it's for 2 years. Hold it and play every single soundbite from Ted Cruz and others that said that an 8-person Supreme Court is not that big of a deal. Our founding fathers didn't da-da-da-da-da. All their BS justification, you play that in loop and you hold it. And if this is going to be the new standard, that the only way a Supreme Court justice gets through is if there's a president that also controls enough votes in his party and the House of Representatives, and it is what it is. Because that's the standard they set. And maybe that's the new normal. Maybe that's a permanent part of our future in terms of how we elect justices. So anyway, I'm going to close this out with this. I'm going to come full circle here, and I'm just going to say this one more time. Judge Kavanaugh should not be appointed to the Supreme Court. That's my personal opinion based on a compromised president that I think is in a lot of legal trouble. Whether or not, we'll see what happens with it. I mean, I tell friends all the time, just plan on Trump getting reelected. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not saying he's going to get impeached or anything, but he's in legal trouble for sure. What are the ramifications of that remain to be seen. So until this investigation is done and he is proven innocent of collusion and or obstruction of justice, which you know what, maybe he is. But until then, I don't think he should be appointing a lifelong judge. Secondly, they need to postpone this at the very least and give this woman a public hearing. And don't demonize her. It's okay to be suspicious. Don't let anybody tell you that either. Okay, you can walk and chew gum at the same time here. There's conflict. I have conflicting feelings on this, but she deserves to be heard, and just like every sexual assault victim does, because I promise you, the vast majority of them are telling the truth, and maybe she is as well. All right, that's all I have for now. It's a very touchy subject. There's a lot of emotions, and as far as my original, my tweet, come back to the very top of the show, I'm not going to delete it. I'm going to leave it there, and I hope I get engaged in conversations about it, because I know there are certain people that have, like at T_Fisher King. This gentleman certainly had a lot of issues with my with my tweet, and he's a liberal, and I have engaged him. So we'll see. Maybe I can get him on the show, on the podcast, and he and I can have a conversation about it. But anyway, that's all I have now. Sound off below in your comments. Let us know what you think in terms of, do you think that this should be, this vote should be postponed? And just what are your general thoughts about this whole thing? That's really all I have. All right. So on behalf of Left Shew Politics, Rick Shew, we appreciate it very much.